All right, today we're going to learn how to patch a hole. So I've got my fabric with the hole, I've got my patch, and I've got my needle that has been threaded and knotted at the end. So if you don't already have a hole in your fabric to practice on, the way I did it was I just took my fabric and I folded it and I cut on the fold. And I just cut a triangle. So that's how I made my hole. Okay. All right, now we're going to add our patch. So this is the outside of my fabric, and this is the inside. So this is where I did my stitching yesterday for repairing a torn seam. And today I'm going to take this hole and I'm going to put my patch in there on the inside, and I'm going to secure it in place with a couple of pins. So I'm going to hold on to the fabric and the patch with one hand, and I'm going to take my pins. I'm going to go in and out on one side, and then in and out on the opposite side. And that's going to keep my patch from moving around. So now that I can just sew it. Okay, so if you look on the back side, this is what it looks like on the inside. There's my pins, but I'm not pinning it to this back piece. So if this was my pant leg and I had a hole in the knee of my jeans, I would only patch, or I'd only pin the patch on the front piece of my jeans, because if I pinned it all together, then I wouldn't be able to get my leg in there, right? Okay. Now we're going to take our needle and thread, and we're going to start by going on the inside. So let me zoom in just a little bit. It doesn't matter where you start, but you do need to start a little bit of a ways away from the hole. And we're going to do a running stitch with this one. Yesterday we did a back stitch. Today we're going to try a running stitch. So there's my first stitch. For my second stitch, I'm going to do the same thing I did yesterday, but instead of going back to the first stitch that I did, or the last stitch that I did, I'm going to go forward. So there are going to be spaces or gaps between stitches today, whereas yesterday with the back stitch, there were not. And I'm just going to keep going around that hole and outlining it with my stitches until I get all the way to the end. Now the smaller I do it, the better, just because if you have really big stitches, sometimes you can still have that fabric moving around, your patch might move around, and then it's still got the hole in there. So we don't want to make our stitches too big. We want to keep them kind of close together, but remember, we're still doing that running stitch, so there's still going to be a little bit of space in between them. I got to be really careful that I don't let that needle go through the back side, or it's going to end up sewing the back of my pants or my fabric to the front, and I don't want to do that. So it got caught on that. I'm just going to pull that pin out because I don't need it anymore. My patch is already being held in place by the stitches. Okay, probably just 2 more stitches, and then I should be ready to knot the back and tie off my stitches so that I can be done. So there's 1, 2, and I think that should be good enough. Okay, so there's what it looks like. Now I'm going to turn it over to the back, do the same thing I did with the running stitch and with replacing a button. I'm going to find some stitches, and I'm going to go through a stitch. Here's one right here. I'm going to make a loop. And I'm going to go through the loop and pull, and that's going to create a knot to tie it off so that my stitches don't come undone. I'm going to do it again. Under the stitch, make a loop, go through the loop, and pull. Last time, under the stitch, make a loop, go through the loop, and pull. And then I'm going to cut that off. Take my pin out, and that hole is patched up. That's it.